That which has a beginning surely has an end, and it was the end of an era for one of the most colorful and perhaps conflicted Chief Justices in the history of the judiciary.
Dr. Willy Mutunga went home just as he came into the office, but more of that in this program. Also, it is day 3 behind bars for MPs accused of hate speech. It's D-Day tomorrow for them. What actually is happening on that front? I'm James Matt. You are right where you should be.
Welcome to the home of fair comment. This is News Sources. I am Julie Masiga.
Well, good evening, everyone. Let's start. Justice Mohammed Ibrahim has taken over the reins at the Judiciary as the President of the Supreme Court. He's the senior most member of the bench, and he holds that job in an acting capacity. The JSC has moved in with speed to fill the vacant positions of the Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justices, and judges of the Supreme Court. That's how we start, introducing our guest tonight for the very first time, Faith Rono. Karibu to the program. Godfrey Musoku. But first, let's just listen in.
We will preside the Supreme Court pursuant to Section 6, subsection 2 of the Supreme Court Act. The Court of Appeal will be overseen by the President of that court, Honorable Justice Paul Kiara Kariuki. Ibrahim is here. And the High Court will be under the leadership of the Principal Judge of the High Court, who is here, Honorable Justice Richard Mongo. The Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, who is the Administrative and Accounting Officer of the Judiciary, Ms. Anna Madi, is here, remains in charge as the Accounting Officer and the Chief Administrator of the Judiciary. This team constitutes the Judiciary Leadership Advisory Council and will offer directions on the operations of each court.
Okay, that's where it is. Faith, you have a first go. Karibu sana to the program.
Thank you.
Looks like, everything is set. Ibrahim takes over, the Supreme Court is, Court of Appeal, President takes over. It all looks set.
Smart. So it does. It actually looks set. Ibrahim is definitely the acting president of the Supreme Court now, but I personally feel like the exit of CJ Mutunga today leaves the judiciary headless, because the Constitution requires that in the absence of a CJ, the deputy CJ should constitute a bench, even for the lower courts, and assign cases for the lower courts. So what happens? So I really hope that with the exit of Mutunga today, we will get, the JSC will move with speed to fill those positions. Otherwise, we will actually get to a point where we have the lower courts suffering. Yes.
Does it look like this is the end of the judiciary in a way?
I really doubt. First and foremost, we must congratulate Chief Justice retired Willy Mutunga, because he has shown what I think I'll call wisdom and leadership, because he was supposed to retire next year. But looking at how the shenanigans which for appointment of such a person in the public office, I think he saw it wise to retire a year early so that he can give Kenyans and the Judicial Service Commission ample time to have his replacement. What the Constitution and drafters of the law probably did not look at is a situation where we could find the office of the Chief Justice and that of the DCJ vacant at the same time, so that you create a small, for me I call it a small vacuum in terms of the leadership of the judicial. But in terms of the administrative roles of the judicial, as the CJ, the exiting CJ has just said, there is every court, from the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court as a leadership. And therefore, I believe that we are not in a kind of a vacuum. But it's my wish and prayer that the Judicial Service Commission can move with speed and do the appointment of the CJ for purposes of, like what Faith said, when a file is referred to the CJ for directions. So we need that person. Yeah. So for now, I think there is a problem, a small problem, because if you have a file which is going to be referred to the CJ for directions, then probably now it rests on the presidents of the respective courts to offer those directions in the meantime.
And to that, Mosoku, the Supreme Court is like the highest court in the land, so we can't really go to like the Privy Council or the House of Lords or anywhere else. This is like the end for us. So if they're seeming to not know clearly which direction to go in, that should be a problem. And two, did we decide that the Chief Justice was 69 or 70? Because I remember there was some kind of argument about his real age. So is he retiring early or is he just retiring?
I think the Chief Justice, to be honest to him, is retiring 1 year early. If you look at this national identity card, it says he's turning 69. But probably there was something with his passport which says he's turning 70. But the primary identification document you get as a Kenyan is as a national ID. A national ID at 18 years. A passport you can get even at 60 years.
Faith, I believe a Kenyan can use either a passport or an ID.
Oh yes, actually I tend to disagree with Mosoko for one reason. I don't see why I would have an ID with one age and then have a passport with a totally different age. You see, and so for me, I really don't know if Mutunga was retiring 1 year early, indeed, or if he's actually 70, and so he decided I can't do this anymore. Yes. I just need to retire. So I cannot authoritatively say that.
We need to authenticate the document. But yes. Whatever the case, this is what I think is the country is being faced with. Two things have happened in the last possibly 2 years, that the political actors have tried to make inroads into the judiciary so that they could, in fact, place people that they would want in several, benches, if you like, from the High Court to the Court of Appeal, and in fact the Supreme Court, so that they could influence who the next Chief Justice is. Secondly, I think the judiciary, in a way, and I think the conflict that we've seen between either the Chief Justice and other judges, and the conflict between, other judicial officers and the JSC, I think has come to play out in a way that perhaps I think would stay. That's why I asked the question, is it the end of judiciary? I think that the institution is much stronger than what it was 4 years ago or 5 years ago, that now it can, withstand, all these elements that are happening. And I think that's a good thing.
I think Justice Mutunga has laid the foundation. It's up now to the next CJ to take the judiciary forward, the next step, because he has opened space, he has opened the courts, he has opened the judiciary. Today, in terms of, there might be challenges in the judiciary, issues of corruption, which I mentioned left, right, and center. But in terms of judiciary and dispensation of justice, you can give him, 70–80%. He has tried.
Yes, I believe he has left a legacy of some sort. And indeed, Dr. Willy Mutunga has finished his 5-year term in the judiciary. Some say he has transformed the judiciary. Others claim he has utterly failed in his assignments. The man himself, in an exclusive town hall with KTN, said he thought there was some good progress, but he really doesn't care about legacy. So as always, Mutunga, being the progressive right from his earring to his Sheng speaking ways, is saying he doesn't really believe in legacy. But I think he does believe he's done a good job. Faith, do you think he's done a good job?
I would say he has really done a good job. The beginning, when he came in, and indeed there were various transformational projects that were kick-started at the judiciary. I just hope that whoever comes in as the next CJ will take up those tasks, like the construction of new courts, for instance, and ensure that it comes to completion, because there are some courts in this country that have been constructed and left. They have never been completed. So you ask the question, what happens to taxpayers' money? So we really hope that the transformation process in the judiciary will go on, even as we get a new CJ and probably a new DCJ as well. And
that's, Mosoko, just before you go, that's the most worrying thing, because, when I sat in with him over the weekend, that was one of the questions that I asked him under the first question, that this transformation, the things that you're happy about, the things that you've done and you're truly proud about, is there a chance any other CJ would rubbish these things? And you'd imagine, someone else would come in with, his own portfolio, with his own, agendas and want to do things, and perhaps transforming the judiciary will not be the key thing and important for them. So there's a chance that that was Mutunga's project, and the next guy comes and doesn't feel that transforming the judiciary is a key thing.
I really don't think that it's a Mutunga, it's a personal initiative. It's a Mutunga thing which should go with Mutunga. For instance, when this CJ came into office, one thing that he promised Kenyans is that every county in this country will have a high court. That is something you have never had. Imagine somebody used to travel all the way from Turkana to Nakuru to access the high court, or Eldoret. Somebody travel all the way from Marsabit to come to Meru or Nyeri to access the High Court. But those are the things that Mutunga said. Let us have a High Court in Marisabit. Let's have a High Court in Turkana, a High Court in Isiolo, a High Court in Mandera. So why would another judge, Chief Justice, come and say, we need to reverse this because it's going to be costly for us to maintain a judge in Mandera?
I think I do agree with you. I think he's actually brought justice much closer to the people. He's built courts, he's hired more judges, he's made it easier for the ordinary person on the street to interact with the judiciary. So it might be hard to roll back those kind of gains. But I think one thing he actually did do as well was try and introduce some kind of customer service, try and be nice to the people who come into the courts. Now that's one thing I'm pretty sure the next person might not have in common, because even when you go to traffic court, you don't feel like you're going to be arrested the very next second when you see cops walking around and stuff like this.
Have you been to traffic court?
Several times. Right.
and one thing, James, one thing you need to credit Mutunga. I was one of the critics. I remember I used to criticize him a lot until I met and sat with him some time back when I was doing an interview with him. And I've spoken to many judges. One thing that the judiciary today they speak, Mutunga is a man who could not raise his phone and call a judge and order him to rule in a certain way. He left the judges to do their work. And that's the only thing that you need, judicial independence. Even if you are the Chief Justice, you cannot call a judge.
How about the next Chief Justice would come and...
That's the thing now. We hope that the foundation that he has set in terms of no interference in your work as a judge, the incoming Chief Justice will uphold that, because that is what it means to be a judge.
I also believe that of course, in terms of independence, it's very important for a judge to be independent. But I had an opportunity to go around the country, actually looking at the courts, the high courts that Mosoko is talking about. And it was actually shocking, the state of the condition that those courts are in, and the judges, like where the judges are sitting, even the courtrooms themselves. So I would say Mutunga really tried.
All right.
Yeah, but we hope for more.
Lots to be done.
Yes.
All right, and now we're joined by the Law Society of Kenya chairman, that is Isaac Okero. Good evening, sir. Welcome to News Sources. We're discussing Mutunga's legacy, and I want to just, at the top of your head, what would you reckon is the legacy? What is that one thing that Kenyans should say about retired Chief Justice Dr. Willy Mutunga?
I think history is going to judge him very fairly once the dust settles and we're able to reflect on his tenure. I doubt very much whether we're going to ever have a Chief Justice who was as accessible as he has shown himself to be. I don't think we're going to have a Chief Justice who is able to respond to wananchi on Twitter, who speaks Sheng, but on the whole, he has overseen a substantial expansion of the entire court system. The number of high courts have been expanded by over 20 high courts in almost every county. He has institutionalized the Court Users Committee, making justice accessible to the communities and enabling the communities to have representatives on these Court Users Committees to engage with the judiciary on whatever problems they felt existed in the administration of justice.
Chairman, I must ask you, while we have all these things that everyone says that is important for him, and I want to get to them in a second, the contrary opinion of those who are saying, well, we're not happy with him because A, he's left the judiciary in a much mess, now we don't know who's going where, and that sort of thing. And in fact, that being his access is actually a problem to some of, legal counsel who are saying that he somehow has removed something from the judiciary. How do you react to that?
Well, I think on the whole, I think wananchi will disagree. I mean, we have been used to a judiciary that has been very aloof and inaccessible. So the change that he has brought will be appreciated with hindsight. That is my expectation. Although, of course, the profession is a very conservative profession, so there would have been some who felt that he might have been going too far. But on the whole, history will treat him very kindly. There will be some to reflect on certain aspects of his tenure with some measure of disaffection, and of course the 2013 presidential petition comes to light, and then of course the Supreme Court events that we have been able to witness in the last few weeks, although of course they have been playing out for much longer, are some of the things that perhaps people will look back on and question.
Let me ask you for direction just before I let you go. Some of my panel are wondering that, I mean, some of the cases which have to go to the Chief Justice's office for direction, what happens to those cases? And now that there's, I don't know what's going to happen. Do you have going to have an acting CJ?
Well, no, there isn't a provision now for an acting Chief Justice in the absence of a Deputy Chief Justice. So what we have now is an acting President of the Supreme Court, and that is the Honorable Justice Mohammed Ibrahim. But he will be acting President of a court that is incorrect. They don't have enough judges to sit. Even if there are applications placed before a single judge to issue conservatory orders, those orders will remain in force until there is a 5-judge bench able to hear them. So I think Kenyans will be waiting to see how quickly this recruitment process can be undertaken so that there is a functioning Supreme Court.
All right. Finally, what's the profile of a man who you think should be the next Chief Justice in 30 seconds or less?
Oh, there are very many fine candidates out there, and I don't think that it is my place to begin to speculate at this stage.
You're not interested in the job?
Nice try, James. I'm not saying anything.
Thank you very much, Isaac. Thank you very much for talking to us. Talking there to Isaac Hero. Quick thoughts?
I think, like he said, we actually need the Judicial Service Commission should move with speed to recruit the judges, to recruit the CJ, and to recruit the DCJ respectively, so that we don't have a vacuum and so we don't have a crisis in the judiciary. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. A vacuum and a crisis. It looks like we're in sort of a tough place right now.
I don't think, I think the Constitution never anticipated a situation where we have where we are today. But given we are here, the good thing is that the Judicial Service Commission has leadership. The Vice Chair, who's Professor Margaret Kobia, has already moved speed. Yesterday, you saw today in the papers, he advertised those positions. I believe tomorrow there will be another advert for CJ. So, I think the speed with which now the JSC will move is what will determine how the leadership crisis at the judicial. But James, if we may go back, why are we here today? Remember, had Justice Karipana Ragwar accepted to retire when our time came, probably would be having a DCJ, but because she had a spirit to fight, that's why we find ourselves here. So,
Mosoko, it's a very long sequence that you're talking about that today. Yeah, it's another politics right there.
Yeah, that's why I say it. Had she accepted to retire at that time, probably we could have.
We would not find ourselves.
I remember when she was hired to replace Justice Nancy Parasa. One of the considerations, because the Judicial Service Commission took into place, was her age. And they made it very clear that you are taking this position for a short time because your time in the judiciary is up, and she accepted. So had she followed the deal that she had struck with the Judicial Service Commission, probably we would not find ourselves here.
But she didn't, so we find ourselves here.
Yes.
So
and Julie, I would actually like to say that most of these judges who find themselves in this situation where they have to retire at 70, most of them were actually brought in, or rather employed, under the old constitution. So under the old constitution, the retirement age was 74. And after 2010, the promulgation of the new constitution, now we have this issue. So clearly, most of them didn't even, didn't anticipate such would happen.
But yes. I think just to clarify, my understanding of the law is that the Supreme Court of Kenya is a creation of the new constitution. And when Justice Tunoi and Karipana Ragwar were hired to that highest court of land, they were hired under the new constitution to a new creature of the constitution, not as old judges. If they wanted to stay up to 74, probably they could have retired from the Supreme Court and TCJ and go back to the High Court and Court of Appeal.
That's true enough, Mosoko. And staying with matters, Justice Rawal, the Deputy Chief Justice, former Deputy Chief Justice, Kalpana Rawal, and Supreme Court Judge Philip Tunoi today lost their last-ditch attempt to block their exit from the judiciary. This is after the Supreme Court declined to reinstate a stay order initially issued by Justice Njoki Ndung'u for 21 days, saying there was no bench to handle the matter. Here is retired Judge Mutunga with that ruling.
Upon the delivery of his position, culminating in the orders vacating the expert orders, it became functus official. Secondly, 3 judges of this bench, having recused and or disqualify themselves from further hearing this matter, there was no competent court before which the application could be properly made. The matter ends there.
So I think there was little doubt in anybody's mind that this was going to happen. I don't think there was any way, given that today their jobs were advertised in the papers, that this application could have gone any other way. But then again begs the question, is this particular bench competent to make any decisions on anyone at this point in time? Or are we just creating a legal mess that somebody else is going to have to come and sort out? Perhaps, I don't know which court this would be, the Court of Appeal, the High Court? How would this go?
I think in the ruling earlier on this week, I think it was on Monday or Tuesday, it was very clear that the Supreme Court, the President of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Willy Mutunga, in vacating the orders given by Justice Ndungu, said that the petitioners had a right of appeal to a new, well and properly constituted Supreme Court. And you know what that means? It means that that Supreme Court must have a new CJ and the new members. So if they have to come back to the judiciary, they have to wait for that, not the current court. Because even, you remember Justice Mohammed Ibrahim withdrew from the case because he said he had an interest, which I believe is the same interest that Justice Ndungu had and Justice Ojwang, who had gone on a go-slow in solidarity with their two colleagues. So therefore, the circumstance under which Justice Mohammed Ibrahim said, I cannot sit and preside over this case, is the same which I believe the two other judges should have followed. Therefore, the current Supreme Court, as is constituted, cannot be the bench to listen to the appeal that the CJ said they have a right to exercise.
Faith.
Yes. If Julia may respond to that, I actually agree with Mosoku that the current Supreme Court, as constituted, cannot clearly listen to that matter. But it's actually unfortunate that some of the judges disqualified themselves because of interest, as they put it. Because, I mean, for me, I don't think it's right to disqualify yourself because of interest. Because what would happen if we have another case and I have an interest and I'm a judge sitting in the Supreme Court? Yeah. So clearly, as it is right now, as constituted, it cannot. We just have to get a new bench.
But James, given that they made a decision this morning, this very same bench or some of them, does it stand?
Well, I think we've not seen the end of this in many ways, because one, there is that issue of those orders that they were issued by Ndungu, and I think what the petitioners wanted was a 21, stay order for them to, say that, well, we still have a right to petition, okay, and that is what they wanted. So they wanted the decision to just a stay order on that the Court of Appeal. Having said that, I think this court had little options as well. Most of the judges had disqualified themselves or recused themselves from listening to this matter, and it was one of those difficult things. So how do they react to it? Do we say, well, we can actually listen to this particular portion of this matter and not this matter in totality? And the problem is there that like what Faith says, and I think I quite agree, is that. And someone made this argument that Kenya is such a small country of 44 million, there's a chance that I know Faith knows Julie knows Geoffrey, and Geoffrey knows Paul, and we know each other. So what happens if we are judges of the Supreme Court and an issue that comes that, sort of touches, we are talking about the law here, not talking about how I know Geoffrey or how I know Julie and that sort of thing. So these arguments have to be made.
But if you ask any lawyer, it's a practice and there's a precedence that judges, magistrates, whoever they are, when you're presiding over a case and you have an interest, you can declare that I have an interest, and therefore I do not think that I'm more competent to preside over this case. There is nothing wrong with a judge saying I have, like, for instance, if you are a judge and your wife is brought before you, obviously you'll say, this is my wife, I cannot preside over this case.
But it seems to me, Mosoku, that all these problems came with the Supreme Court. Do we really need this court? Do we really? Because it seems like we keep on going round in circles trying to figure out exactly what it's supposed to do and how, and we're not getting there quickly enough.
Well, that might be true. Do we need the Supreme Court? That's something that we should discuss seriously.
That's
open for a Supreme Court or a constitutional court? That's something that we should talk about. But we don't take you to our Twitter poll. And there's a story that is coming up on the second part of this show, where a judge in Mombasa has actually allowed the police to continue doing annual examinations to determine gays. And we're asking you on Twitter poll, is it constitutional for the police to order annual examination to prove homosexuality? Do you think it's constitutional for the police to order annual examination to prove homosexuality? Tweet us at KTN News, at James Smart, at Julie Masiga. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the other side of the break. Will you take a short break? We'll be right back with more. Don't go too far.
Welcome back to News Sources, your home for fair comment. Indeed, it is day 3 for legislators accused of hate mongering. Fellow politicians have claimed that the MPs are not being allowed time to see their families, are not properly fed, and that the conditions where they're being held are extremely inhumane. The courts have denied them bail, but University of Nairobi student leader Babu Owino was today released on a cash bail of 100,000 shillings.
These members must be released without charge within the next 24 hours. And if that does not happen, there will be consequences.
So Raila, they're saying that there will be consequences if they're not released. Meanwhile, I think the police are well within their rights to hold them for at least 24 hours without charge. I think it's slightly over 24 hours now. And they should be treated fairly. Of course, like any other criminal or alleged criminal, they should be due process. So should we really feel sorry for them that they're not eating well and they cannot be seen by their friends, or is that just
should add this
consequences?
That President Uhuru Kenyatta in the last few minutes has said that anyone who's engaging on hate speech on behalf of Jubilee or court, they're on their own. Paul, how fast were this?
I think I differ with the Honorable Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, on this. I mean, the country is bigger than all these people. So immediately, Moses Kuria made some of the worst statements we've had in terms of hate speech in this country. The court fraternity held a very strong press conference demanding for action from the government, and they were very clear in their message. Now, 2 days down the line, when the Inspector General takes some action on this legislator, court is coming with the same position now, taking a different position. So the question is, if it's your own, it becomes okay for them to it becomes okay for them to continue with hate speech. But if it's from the other coalition, then it becomes something else. I think for me, these gentlemen should stay in. They should cool their heels down there and actually experience what Kenyans go through. They are in charge of sharing the resources for the country. So when they sit in there, at least they should have a feel of what really prison life is, so that next time when they are doing prison reforms, they can be able to understand that really let us put in some more money to be able to.
Because you can be a guest of this place.
They can come back there. So it's in their own interest actually to be able to do that. But for me, I'm strongly behind the IG on this. I think if they are innocent and there's nothing, they have very strong lawyers. Court has some of the strongest lawyers in this country. They should be able to go to court and get whatever it is that they are looking for.
Strictly speaking, Wafula and Mosoku, it's a bailable offense, hate speech. So technically they should be out on bail. I don't know what they're being held for. So are we breaking the law just because it's this particular 8? Or what are we saying about this?
I don't think that any of those 8 lawmakers lose their rights absolutely because they have been accused of perpetrating hate speech. I happen to have spent a better part of yesterday at Pangani, and I witnessed that it's true. I spoke to their family members. Some of their family members have not been able to access. If you've been arrested and you've gone to a cell, trust me, every time a relative or a friend comes to visit you, police always allow you access. So I don't think when the magistrate and later the High Court said they should be held, denied them the right of accessing their lawyers or their family. At least for that one, I'm not sure. But what I'm pointing out is, look at the sequence of events. The governor of Nakuru and the member of parliament for Bahati, Kimani Ngunjiri, and the governor Mbugua, they led a group of thugs, you can call them thugs or hooligans, who wanted to invade a meeting which the leader of the opposition was holding with his supporters, or a group of supporters, saying he's not allowed to be in Nakuru. They even followed him to a rally and said, Hakuna Bahati. They didn't find him there and they banned him. And that's when Kimani Ngunjiri said members of a certain community must leave Nakuru. Then on Sunday, Moses Kuria at a religious function says allegedly that somebody should die for this country to be peaceful. And in the same function, Wetito utters other utterances targeting a certain community. Then, 48 hours and 24 hours later, the opposition called a press conference, and they hold a press conference and say, we demand that these people are arrested and are charged. Then, immediately, the IG, who had responded to the earlier allegations that we are reviewing the clips, orders that all these 8 now, they record statements. In fact, there were supposed to be 7. The next day, we hear that even Muthama's house has been surrounded. So from the charges that we have seen, alleged charges we have seen, specifically, like even as maybe in the media, we are failing to tell the country, because Muthama is accused, alleged of having been in that press conference and threatened to lead a demo to the IG's office. Muthama was not in the press conference. We had the clips, we as journalists, we went there, we covered that function. It was aired, it was published.
So the question that we should answer
now the question is,
would it have these people been arrested? Say, Bahati MP and the governor of Nakuru.
Yes, the governor of Nakuru,
and someone else, and Ferdinand Wetito. Would they have been arrested if court would not have held the press conference on Monday? Is it Monday or Tuesday?
They held theirs on Monday.
Yes.
Because the events happened on
they were reacting to those events.
Yes.
So would they have been arrested? Because that's the question.
Your guess is good as mine.
Well, I think what is
It's
fair for me, where I see it, is that it's good for you to realize that when you live in a glass house, you should not be able to throw stones. Because, I mean, if you look at, honestly, the individuals that have been, that we are calling the Pangani 8 right now, I mean, maybe 2, if you look at their charges, they are a bit malicious. You find that police probably, there's something more that they are looking for. And you need to actually have the context for you to fairly be able to interpret them. So sometimes you can look at a charge sheet and then you conclude that's what it is. But when evidence is actually brought in court, then probably they'll be able to explain themselves why they are doing this. But I don't think, I mean, when the judge allowed them 4 days, that's still within the law. I don't know which constitution we are reading. A judge can actually allow police more time for you to be in custody as they conduct investigations. And these are special people. These are politicians. When Moses Kuria speaks, someone will be thinking that he's speaking for Uhuru Kenyatta.
Well,
when
Muthama speaks, a politician is a special person, just a person like anybody
else. I'm
saying
in terms of their ability to be able to influence, I mean, decisions. Look at them. When you and I are arrested, do we have demonstrations to get you out? How often does that happen? You understand?
Yes.
A common man, you drive maybe on the road, you are caught in the wrong side of the law. Do we have all that? So these are really, as
special
you say,
circumstances, perhaps, but not special people.
I agree on that. But having said that, they will be able to, where they sit, they have the ability to procure justice, if you might say. Okay. They have pressure and influence.
Let's grow a story. And meanwhile, the Code Coalition is calling for the immediate release of all the legislators. In Pangani, court says Jubilee is using the blanket arrests of this legislator to shield Moses Kuria, who they claim fired the first round of hate speech.
And please notice that what will happen tomorrow is just a mention. It's a mention. No charges have been preferred against these leaders. This is why they were remanded in a police station as opposed to going to a prison remand place. Very deliberate, so they can receive maximum punishment before they take a plea. So we will all be in court tomorrow. And notice here we have said that the rights of individuals here includes the violation of the rights of members of Jubilee, because they too are Kenyans and are entitled to protection under the law.
Yeah, isn't the biggest problem then, would say, is that we don't know how to deal with hate in this country, or even don't know what that hate is, right? I could possibly have, not cordial relationship, with you and say some hostile and insulting things. Is that hate? What amounts to hate speech to a level whereby we actually do something, and then doing something, what is that something?
The threshold, Smart. Look at Moses Kuria, what he says. Immediately, what the statement is talking about, assassination of, the opposition leader. That's not something that you take for granted. Raila Odinga is not just any other ordinary Kenyan. If someone is saying some things like those, some people take them very seriously. So for me here, in terms of the threshold, at what point are you saying, and what tension that it creates in terms of your statements? Look, when these gentlemen have been in the last 36 or so hours, I think the tension in the country is coming down. I will rightly say that we are seeing things calming down, and that's a good thing. So they're in their right to demand that they are fairly treated, and that is every Kenyan has that right. But I think we need also to look at a situation whereby how do we really prosecute this matter fairly so that it cuts across everybody. So Moses Kuria was the other day in court. He was released on bail. He has broken the same law. Mudama has also been there. So is it just going to be another revolving door? They go today, they are charged, they come out, no evidence.
Well, there is actually a threshold for hate speech. It's actually if you make a threatening statement, an insulting statement, or an abusive statement, or if you publish such statements. So I think they must have done all three across the board. So I don't know exactly what the punishment is, but it's clear what hate speech is. In the same vein, court, like throwing tantrums for a 2-year-old is kind of like demonstrations and ultimatums for court, because every time they don't get their way, they're like, we're going to demonstrate, or you have to do this in 24 hours. So maybe we don't even know how to dialogue in this country. Maybe perhaps it's a bigger question, or how to come to some kind of consensus, because all these things don't have to happen when you have clear guidelines of what the crime is, what the punishment is, and then move on from there, accept and move on from there, if you will.
I think for me, the problem is in the law. We must accept that as Kenyans we passed a new constitution in 2010, but there are loopholes in that constitution. For instance, if you look at chapter 6 on integrity and leadership, it's very clear, but that one was mutilated. One, the highest court in the land and the Constitutional Court, they mutilated that by ruling that even if you have been convicted, as long as you have not exhausted the last avenue of appeal, you are eligible for election. Had we implemented the spirit and the letter of chapter 6 of the Constitution, we will not be experiencing hate speech. These members of parliament today, they know they can say anything and get away. Even if they are convicted for 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, they can still be elected even if they are in prison. So unless we address now that law and make it very hard for anybody who's accused, especially if you are aspiring for leadership and you are accused of any crime, including hate speech, because the very same people that you purport to want to lead are the ones now you are issuing statements targeting them. If for instance, you look at Nakuru is a cosmopolitan county, then a leader there elected by all those people from Nakuru then stands and says a member of a certain community must leave this county. And that member of that community is a taxpayer. That member of that community voted for you probably. So what we need as a country is to pass strict laws. If you look at the National Cohesion and Integration Act, it's very weak. Because I remember in 2010, there are some leaders who were arrested and charged for hate speech. They were released because of lack of evidence, which I believe there was because of the weaknesses in that law. So we need to address the issue of the law, and especially chapter 6 of the Constitution.
I think the law doesn't have a problem. What law do you need more than what we have today? Magufuli didn't have any law, needed a change of law in Tanzania to do what he's doing. Michuki, when he was here, he did a lot. He didn't need a change of law. We have all that it needs if we just wanted to do the right thing. Yeah.
True, I agree. We do have enough laws, but from drama in Nairobi to drama in Mombasa, where a judge has dismissed a case by 2 men who had challenged a forced anal examination, which was to prove that they had engaged in a homosexual act. The 2 moved to court challenging the examination, saying it violated their privacy and amounted to rape. The judge dismissed the case, citing that the excretory opening was part of the alimentary canal and not a sexual organ. Here is an excerpt of his ruling.
As envisaged under Section 162 of the Penal Code, rectal or anal examination is, according to current medical science and constitution of the human anatomy, the only way of examination to show either the anus is dry or has been subjected to application of medical lubricants to ease anal penetration. The anus, unlike the vagina, has no natural lubrication. There is no other way of the human body upon which to carry out medical examination. Whether the examination was reasonable or not is a question of fact, which only the trial court, or as the case may be, an appellate court, after ascertaining all the facts, may determine.
Well, and that is the question you're also asking you on Twitter, if you think it's constitutional for the police to order anal examination to prove homosexuality, and 70% of those who are tweeting are finding this quite repulsive.
I feel we've learnt more about the anus than we need to on any given day. But having said that, I think that the rights of these particular men were violated. Their right to privacy, their right to human dignity was straight up thrown out the window in the name of gathering evidence to see if they're homosexuals or not. Mosoku.
We need to ask ourselves, does our law allow homosexuality?
It doesn't actually name homosexuality as a word. It says unnatural acts or indecent conduct or something of that nature, which is fluid.
If you look at the penal code, which the judge has just mentioned there, it says a man having carnal knowledge of another man.
It's not expressed in the act, Mosoku.
But it says that. That's homosexuality, whichever name you call it.
Paul, do you think our laws allow this?
I wouldn't even think our laws will even come close to even thinking about this kind of treatment. I mean, look at it; it's disgusting. I don't even understand why
the treatment of the men being examined.
I mean, it's unacceptable. You wouldn't want to do that. I think there would be better ways of doing it.
And I think our constitution did contemplate something like this by saying that everybody has a right to human dignity and not to be humiliated on the basis of their belief system, or which I would include sexual orientation. James.
Well, like I say, like 70% of the Kenyans tonight were very conflicted about this. Just that the fact that people have a right to, to do what they think that it's right and proper for them, all right? And we have a right to stay away from it, okay? And say, as long as this, rocks your boat, go for it.
But sometime I think as a country we go wrong. I don't think there is any person who can say today, I went to hospital and the doctor, a public hospital, that for instance Kenyatta, and the doctor asked me if I'm gay, and when I said I'm gay, he refused to attend me. So when you talk about probably discrimination on the basis of their homosexuality, it doesn't occur, because we have not reported cases of somebody who has gone to a matatu and people discover he's gay and they refuse.
So are we saying we are a tolerant society?
On this one is a case of where you've been accused of perpetrating that crime, because a crime under the penal code. And therefore, the court orders that for us to prove that these people actually were engaged in that activity, conduct examination, APC, and let the medical report be used to convict you or not.
But I believe there's an implication that you have to catch people in the act. Wouldn't that be enough evidence that these people are homosexuals? Do you have to stick things in their places to gather evidence?
I'll differ with you for a simple reason. Let me give the unfortunate example of rape. People who are accused of rape are never caught on the act. They are reported. And therefore, the examination the victim undergoes to prove that she was raped, isn't it?
Right.
And this examination is almost
similar
to what is being done, only that it's being done on different organ. So you cannot say that, for instance, we are humiliating this unfortunate victim of rape by examining so that we can get evidence to convict the criminal.
What did the evidence find? Did they find
evidence perhaps found
that they were actually
evidence of sexual activity, which is what they wanted, but I think it was still a gross violation of their persons. That's my final word on that.
I think there would be better ways of going around it if we have to prosecute such kind of a case in court. I find this disgusting. But the other thing is that we must look at ourselves and ask, do we have gays in the society, or are we just putting our heads in the sand?
All right. Putting our heads in the sand, let's finish with some good news. As First Lady Michelle Obama on Tuesday night honored a Kenyan entrepreneur, Wanjiru Waweru, during the United States of Women Summit dinner at the U.S. Department of State. Wanjiru, an architect by profession, received a special mention during the dinner for her work through her company, Funks Kids, which specializes in children's furniture.
From Kenya, so we're family. Shiru started a business called Fun Kids with a Z to create furniture, accessories, and educational tools for children that are based on African stories. Yes, that's you. But while there was plenty of demand for her product, she found that as a woman, it was hard for her to get the capital she needed to meet that demand. But then thanks to a business loan that 10,000 women provided, Shiru was able to double her production capacity, hire new employees, and start selling her products around the world. Shiru, come up here. This is worth stopping for a second.
Well, a moment of fame. I must say that being Kenyan is dope, and it's a culture. Yeah? Paul?
Yeah, these are some of the things that make me proud to be a Kenyan. I mean, it's really great.
Just the other day you wanted to be a Ugandan, Paul. That's the other day on this one.
I didn't. I mean, the fact that I'll say that we need to improve here and there, it doesn't mean that I'm a very patriotic Kenyan. That's why I will want everything done properly. And this is one of the things that will make me happy to be a Kenyan.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I just like the way she was saying Shiru Waithaka. He was very endearing. And I think this is Obama's last term, obviously, last few months in office, and I think him and Michelle are becoming freer and saying what's on their mind and embracing all sorts of different things. And clearly here they're embracing their homeland. We're family, she said we're family because we're Kenyan. And it's just heartwarming to see that Kenyans are doing great things and they're being recognized. And very good to know that Obama is half Kenyan and has been in the White House for 8 years. So yeah, it was a proud moment. Yeah.
Up to, let me confess, up to yesterday, I had not known who Shiro was until I had Michelle. Someone shared with me the clip of Michelle saying, Shiro, Shiro. So it's fantastic that someone out there can recognize such a wonderful Kenyan who's doing a good job and is, I believe now, carrying our flag in the US, because by moment of that, when she was being honored, you can imagine the whole world probably has seen that clip. So I feel proud as a Kenyan, and I'm so happy for the lady, for what she's doing, and I believe Kenyans, we have what it takes to be recognized.
Kenyans rule the world.
Huh? We rule the world.
In 30 seconds less, I mean, posting the panel, we are sure to be recognized outside for us to recognize. This is another Kenyan thing, that we don't do well with recognizing our very own when they're here, until they leave.
We have to work. That's work in progress. We do recognize when they go win outside and they come. We are so good at doing that. But as you rightly put, we do not recognize our heroes while they're here.
I think Kenya is a classic example of prophets who are never recognized at home.
Right,
like we are never recognized. We are like Jesus. But out there, we are recognized.
Right. Well, I'll just say that Obama is half Kenyan, so technically she was being recognized by a Kenyan.
Okay. Well, let's leave it at that. Let's recognize the presence of Linda Gutu on 9 p.m. That's it for News Sources.